Okay, hi everyone. Today is the 19th of July. That's a Monday. Don't worry that the screen looks really dark today. There's going to be some photographic images coming up on the screen, so you're not going to have to be looking at me much during this entire process. I got a cup of fireweed tea, my Ivan tea that I've been making, and I wanted to share with you the experiences I had with four specific, we'll call them pieces of art. There are three would be sculptures, one would be an actual painting, that drew my attention into such incredible focus, such incredible detail, that each was an experience in itself. And I wanted to share these with you to have a discussion about, again, the ancient style of art, the ancient way of making, whether it be a statue, a painting, a relief, a carving. Those ancient pieces of art were made to send power to the people who were seeing them. They were not things that you looked at to enjoy. They were things that were designed to energetically impact with the viewer. And they still have that impact today. So we start with this first item. That's the crystal skull. Now the story of this particular crystal skull is from the British Museum. I saw this one in 2010. And I remember I had walked through a good half of the museum because I went to the Egyptian area first. And there were some nice pieces in the museum, but of course, having been to the Cairo Museum, there's really nothing in the British Museum that stands out like that, like energetically or anything else. And then I got into the back room where the main focus tends to be a moai from Easter Island. But as soon as I got to the crystal skull, and I knew it was there, it was on my list of things I really wanted to see, I couldn't stop looking at it. I mean, I just kept staring at the skull. I'm going to say for an hour and a half. I'm going to say for sure for an hour and a half, I just stared at this thing. And I looked at it from every conceivable angle, from the sides, from the back, from the top. Of course, if I could have gotten underneath the case, I would have looked at it. And I couldn't believe that other people were coming to look at it, look at the skull for like 20 seconds, and then move on to something else. I was like, how can you not just be absolutely mesmerized by this thing? And of course you have to ask, what is a crystal skull? Because there's a lot of suggestion that the crystal skull is a fake, that the crystal skulls are not genuine ancient artifacts to start with, that they were made in the late 1800s or the early 1900s as sort of forgeries for art collectors with these. I'm just going to get my glasses. These, these. That's a key story, that they were just made as art forgeries. If you look into the sort of the story of the crystal skull, or what is claimed by the people who'd been in possession of them, is that they tended to come from Central or South America. Probably what's called the Mitchell-Hedges skull is probably the most famous. There's one here in Britain. There's one in the museum in Paris. There's a couple others throughout the world. They are all different looking. Each crystal skull has its own look, its own. I would assume this is the only one I've seen up close, but I would assume they also have their own feel. But the story goes is that the crystal skulls were made in an ancient time, like a time, I guess what you would describe as like Atlantis, if you were going to use that word, right? Like such an extremely old period. And that within the crystal skulls, because of course crystal, as we all know, it's used in all sorts of communication, in computer technology and radio technology. It's used to hold, store, move information. So the crystal form holds information very well, and supposedly there are, I believe the old claim is that there was 13 crystal skulls, and each one had a particular amount of information that was, you might say, downloaded into the skull. and that at some point, this is the story, at some point in time, these 13 skulls are supposed to be brought together to the same place. All the skulls, I guess, 12 skulls in a row, put in a circle, the 13th in the middle, and then this will activate all of the information within the skulls to overflow to the planet. Okay, that's the story. What can we tell, or at least what can I tell, because these are my stories or my experiences? What can I tell from being there looking at the crystal skull in person? First of all, like I say, it was mesmerizing. And it drew me in. I mean, even you're just looking at a picture of it now. You're just looking, this is one of the photos that I took of the skull. And I think as you're looking at it, you would feel, you're feeling the same. Even though it's just an image on a screen, somehow it's drawing you into the inside of it. And that's how I felt, that if I could have taken this out of the case and been able to take it like back to my hotel room for the night and been able just to hold it in my hands and stare at it for like hours directly, like right in front of my face, where like my eyes could be right in front of its eyes, the feeling was some part of what I would call my consciousness would have been drawn into the skull. That it's not like the information comes out of the skull to you outside of it. You get, just like the information, you get pulled into the skull somehow, and then there'd be a mixture of your consciousness and whatever the skull is holding. And then when you leave the skull, that's how you take the information out of it. At least this is how it felt. When I left the skull, this was a long time ago now, 12 years ago, I felt very energized, and I felt very, very alert. And I recall I wasn't hungry either. It had been quite a long day. We'd been in the museum for 4 or 5 hours. And normally by that time, I'd be ready for some food. I wasn't hungry either. I was just, it was an absolute energetic experience. And again, if you had the opportunity to be with this thing for days upon days at a time, just with it on your lap, in your hands, I can't even imagine what the experience would be. If you get a chance to see a crystal skull, or if you've seen a crystal skull in your own, like, not that there's these little ones I think that you can purchase, and I mean, like, the ones that are classified as potentially real deals. If you've seen one of these and have an experience, share it in the comments. I'd like to know what your experience was of a crystal skull. Like I say, mine was the feeling like it wants to pull you into it, where it's holding where it's holding like a transceiver of information, and it doesn't transmit it; it pulls you in to get it. The second piece of art that pulled me in like that is this one here. And this, I could choose 50 unbelievable statues and pieces of artwork from ancient Egypt. This is the statue of Thutmoses III. This is in the Luxor Museum, a museum that certainly gets far more people than the Cairo Museum. Originally on my first trip when I was in Egypt like 3 or 4 months, I'd even originally not planned to go to the Luxor Museum. I've already been to Cairo. Why would I go to the Luxor Museum? But I finally did one night. I went over, and I'm so glad I did, because there were some nice pieces and some interesting things. But when I came to this statue, again, it was a sense of I couldn't stop looking at it. And again, I'm going to say I stood at this thing for an hour and a half, 2 hours, probably. It was just me and the statue. And there were so many eventually, after I'd been there for like the first half hour, you're more just seeing the detail. You're seeing the unbelievable smoothness of the granite. Now, I couldn't touch this particular statue. It was far enough from the railing. There's no chance I could have reached over and touched it. But I've been with other granite pieces like this on the Giza Plateau or at Saqqara or wherever, where it's stone boxes or other pieces of shaped granite. So I know what this feel would be like. I know what this statue would feel like, because I felt this kind of unbelievably smooth granite. Again, supposedly made with copper tools or some other garbage answer. I mean, this is This is made with an absolute high technology. You can see as well that the symmetry of both sides of the face are extremely perfect, almost like impossible to create by anything but sort of technological machining work to make that kind of symmetry, that kind of smoothness to the granite. Okay, or basalt, I'm not sure what it is. Okay, so that's what I took in for the first about half hour. But after I got through longer than that, and again, it was the sense of it's pulling me, it's magnetically pulling me, and it's dragging me into its being. All of a sudden, I noticed that the nostrils were opening and closing. And as I looked down a little further, I noticed that the chest was going out and coming back in. The statue was breathing. The statue was alive. It was the first instance I'd come to see that these ancient supposed statues, at least at one point, had life in them. They were living beings. They were not statues. That's how much power these things had. And I began matching my breathing with the statue. And the more I breathed with the statue, I began standing like the statue. I wished I'd had the two metal rods that there are so many of these pharaonic statues are holding. Someone I once read was claiming one was like I think copper and one was silver. One was silver, one was gold. Was the idea was you're creating this magnetic charge in the body by holding these two different metal cylinders. And the metal cylinders might not have been hollow. They might have actually been filled with something. Could have even been like liquid mercury. And you would have been creating an unbelievable energy current. But anyway, I was standing there as if I was holding those two metal objects, breathing with the statue. And yeah, by about an hour and a half, I felt like I was the statue. I felt like I was the statue looking back at myself, standing there looking at the statue. And in that moment of being the statue, again, this is almost 20 years ago, there was a sense of unbelievable stillness. I can't describe it any other way as an unbelievable, just mental clarity and stillness. The feeling was I could have asked just about any question in that moment and tapped into an answer, but I had no interest in forming a question at all. The stillness and the clarity was like enough. Answers weren't required, just the stillness. And this happened, these ideas with statues, the reason I'm sharing this is to share some various other things that happened with statues along the way. This happened as well with a Buddhist statue in the Glenbow Museum in Calgary one time. I also saw, it was a wooden statue though, not stone. And the same thing, I noticed that the statue was breathing. Beautiful statue. I'll try to find a picture of it on the internet and put it up, but I don't know if I will. And yeah, the statue was also breathing. And again, I stood there and same thing, matched the breathing pattern of the statue with myself. And again, there came this clarity of just still-minded clarity. And you have to remember, these statues are made to, in some way, project energy. They're not just there to look a certain way. It's not modern art or anything that a modern artist does. They're built to illuminate. They're built to empower. They're built to transform every single person who comes to it with a clear mind and an open heart. If you come with those two things, the statue will affect you. I've told some stories in some of my other videos where I've had people get healed, particularly from Sekhmet statues in various museums. And even in the Cairo Museum, there is one Sekhmet statue. Yeah, this one that sits on the ground floor, or used to sit on the ground floor. They moved the museum now, right? But where it used to sit at the stairway. By the time I used to get to the Sekhmet statue and was thinking about going upstairs or into the Akhenaten room, whatever, I'd be a bit tired. Those objects. The objects don't. Also, when you're around all of these statues, like in a museum, you're getting so much energy. You're getting so much information. You're getting so much um, and information not on this, almost on this dimensional plane, like almost on other levels of dimensions, that so much is coming into you, you get really, really tired. If you're just looking at one statue only and leaving, you wouldn't. But by being around so much and seeing so much, it just. But the Sekhmet statue, I would go through and I would casually touch it when no one could notice that I was doing that, and I would get energized again. I would like literally get my energy back. Sekhmet, the fire, the Egyptian female fire, and I'd get the fire, and I'd be able to go through the next part of the museum. And that's why I'm sharing these things, is to give you these insights into the ancient art. Here's the third piece that mesmerized me. This is an Olmec head. Now, most of the Olmec heads you'll find are in around. Are they in Oaxaca? Are they in Veracruz? I can't remember where they all are now. But they're from the group of the ones that were there before the Maya, before the Toltec. They basically know nothing about, other than that the Mayans and the Toltec, their calendar, their knowledge, their everything, are claimed to be descendants of the Olmec. The Olmec is called rubber people, which makes no sense whatsoever. Why would you call a civilization the rubber people? And of course, these are very African-looking statues. These are African-looking beings, and no anthropologist anyway has been able to give a proper answers to why the Olmecs depicted what are obviously Africans in the statues. And they're huge. This particular one, this is the one I saw at the Anthropological Museum in Mexico City. This was actually my first day, I think, in Mexico City. I went to the Anthropological Museum. One of the first things I did, because the Olmec head is outside. So one of the absolute first things I'd seen in Mexico City was this. And of course, I'd known about them. I'd seen photos of them. I was looking forward to digging into the story of the Olmec. But once I came, like say, face to face with it, and there's some distance, there's a little bit of distance as to where you stand and where you see the Olmec statue, the Olmec head. The size of it was, first of all, the first thing is, it's again the size of it, and it was the feeling of, as I began to, again, I didn't stare at this one for hours, I maybe stared at this one for 20 minutes or something. But it was the sense of, how to describe it? The feeling was that the statue was way smarter than I was ever going to be. However much knowledge and wisdom I thought I was going to get, the statue I was looking at was always going to be 10 steps ahead of that. That this statue was, this Olmec head was loaded. It was like literally loaded with information. The same way I talked about in my video on Teotihuacan, how the wisdom and the knowledge is in the stones of Teotihuacan, and if you can interact with the stones, you'll interact with the knowledge. It's same as what the Olmec did something similar. Whoever these Olmecs were, they did something with the head. So that to me, the Olmec head is very similar to the crystal skull in some respects, in that it's stored information, and maybe the Olmecs are the ones who made the crystal skulls. I don't know, but there was a similar interaction with the Olmec head as with the crystal skull. And I remember when I left the Olmec head, this is really over 20 years ago now, so it's hard to remember all these stories. I went through the museum and I felt like something was going to happen. That my meeting with the Olmec head, I felt like it had opened a portal. That's the best way I can describe it. It like opened a portal. And that very night is the night a story that's in Falling for Truth, which you can hear the whole story of, chapter 6, 7, I don't know. If it's the first story in that chapter, it's here, you can listen to it. It's where I wound up meeting the woman in the Mexico City bar, whose family wound up looking after me for 5 or 6 days and taking me to Teotihuacan and just sort of being my personal my personal bed and breakfast almost. They kind of just looked after me the whole time I was there before I left to go to Palenque. And I didn't think of it so much at the time until I was making this video right now, but again, this feeling like the Olmec head was opening something, and then lo and behold, that very night, I have this unbelievable coincidental meeting that opens all these doorways for me through Mexico City. So I don't think that's coincidental, and I don't think if I hadn't had the merging with the Olmec head, I'm not sure now I would have had that meeting and would have had the same kind of experience at the sites in Mexico that I did. That somehow it's like the Olmec head was like a door opener for me, if that makes sense. Okay, here's the fourth thing, and this is a painting now, and it's not one of the paintings you normally see on the walls of my home, which I get to enjoy every day. This is Leonardo da Vinci's The Annunciation. Now, as you know, the one behind me that you often see on the wall, that's also the Annunciation. That's at the Monastery of San Marco. But this one from Da Vinci is, again, something I probably stared at for, what, a couple hours? Maybe an hour at least. It was just, again, mesmerizing is the only word I can use to describe what it was like to see this thing up close. It had it was, first of all, was the color. The colors of the painting kind of really draw you in. That's the first memory I have is because I had seen a number of Annunciations already, but there was something, first of all, in the color. There was also the background. Now, the background of this painting has had a tremendous amount of examination over the years. Now, and I've given you the painting from this angle. The reason I've given it to you from an angle is because if you're actually there looking at the painting and you stand where you would normally look at a painting, it looks one way, but the more you move to the right side of the painting and look back at it, the painting changes perspective and it changes what it's showing. It's like a photograph doesn't do that justice. You have to see it to actually get that. But the background of the painting has so many really interesting features, be it the way the trees are shaped. In particular, there's one with like 4 or 5, almost looks like a radio tower in the background. There's another one that looks like it's got 2 eyes and a face looking through you. There's another area, the way the mountains are formed, the way the mountains and the hills in the background are formed. Everything in the background of the painting is pulling you in as much as what's going on in the foreground, as much as what's going on in the Annunciation description itself. The background of the painting is never out of your, at the same moment, is never out of your sight, if that makes sense. There's also this beautiful idea of, even though you don't see, I think it's Botticelli's Annunciation, who has lines coming from the angel to Mary, that there's like, the energy is actually shown as lines. In this one, the lines aren't there between the fingers of the angel and the left upraised hand of Mary in this picture, but it's already the idea that that there is energy movement in this painting. It's like you don't see it, but you feel it. You feel the movement of like energy going from one to the other, and the more you look at it the more you kind of pick that up. Of course, there's the beauty of the artwork itself and the way that the gowns have been painted and the wings have been painted and etc. But it was more of of an energetic thing that you somehow, again, and I'm going to say this the same with similar to the other three objects I've talked about. This is one of the few paintings I've ever been there that feels like you're being pulled into the painting. It doesn't feel like you're external and the painting is in some way that you are separate from the painting. That if you take enough time with this particular, this is at the Uffizi gallery, if you take enough time with this, it feels like the painting pulls you into it. That somehow Leonardo da Vinci's paintings and Michelangelo has a similar thing to it, and Botticelli's are similar. These three Renaissance artists specifically, because I get that too sometimes with the Birth of Venus and even Primavera, Botticelli's Primavera, springtime. The feeling like you're actually being pulled into the painting, that you're not here looking at a painting there, that dividing line between me and the piece of artwork is so infinitesimally small that it's like you're in the painting, if that makes sense. Like I don't feel when I was looking at Da Vinci's Annunciation, I didn't, how to describe this, I didn't feel like I was standing in the room in the gallery looking at the painting. I felt like I was in the painting at the edge of that room looking at what was going on, and that the scene had motion to it, that it was not a still image on a canvas. Like I say, there was the movement of the energy from the one to the other was seen, particularly as you move to the right side of the painting and you're looking back at the angle that Da Vinci seems to have wanted you to view it from. The energy transfer seems quite clear. And that also then means that there's an energy transfer between the painting and you. That you're not just then, when you can get into that openness with the right piece of art, you are having that transfer. In fact, I was having a discussion with a really interesting guy here this morning, and we were talking about Kubrick's 2001, and I was mentioning the secret of the monolith, right, that Rob Agger helped understand, that the monolith is when you turn it sideways, it is the movie screen, the initial movie screen that you see, that's black when when there's nothing on the screen, and then the first shot of the opening part of the movie is actually the black screen before some text and things roll up on it, right? Indicating that the change of consciousness is the thing that you're merging with is the movie itself. That as you're watching 2001: A Space Odyssey, you're not supposed to be the person in the audience watching a thing on the screen. You're supposed to be moving into the screen, which is the monolith, which is the mode of transformation, the mode of the change of consciousness. That as that line blurs between you and the screen, you and the monolith, you get this merging, and what's encoded in the piece of artwork will become what's encoded in you. So I really felt like sharing these 4 experiences just for that reason, that maybe certain museums and art galleries around the world can start opening again, and you can somehow be allowed to enter. I don't know if you can get to any of these places anymore. I don't know what the rules are like in different parts of the world, but maybe by chance where you live, one of these things are open and you can get in and go see it without any kind of major hassle. Go do that. Really. Go, if you've got works of art, true works of art, whether these statues or paintings or whatnot, go and experience them with this insight that I've given you, which is, don't just walk by, don't just take a quick look, don't just, okay, interesting, boy, that's a really nice painting, and move on. Find something that draws you and just spend time with it. Take at least 20 or 30 minutes to just be with that piece of art and see what starts to happen. Don't have expectations. I mean, in my case, it was this sense of feeling of merging, the sense of like the artwork pulling me, conscious awareness, into it. Your experience might be different. But the point being is, if you're with a real work of art from a real ancient understanding, using the sacred geometry and sacred mathematics, and actually having energy implanted, you might say, in the artwork, there's going to be a high opportunity of an experience of some form of consciousness shift, transformation, understanding, wisdom. And given that this whole discussion I have, which is, exit from the cave, exit from the cave. One of the ways uh, I, at least I believe, get the energy and the access to exit Plato's cave is to catch all of the little pointers, little pieces of information, um, transformative parts that have been placed in from outside the cave. I don't think everything in Plato's cave, I certainly don't believe everything within this simulation is all made by and for the simulation. I think there's lots of things in here that are from, you might say, the other realm, or from the other world, are from the place that the simulation is made from, and have been implanted into the cave. And it's like the finger of God on the Sistine Chapel ceiling. That is pointing at, that is inward, but you have to decide to go to it, and you have to put your finger. You then have to be Adam in the image and point your finger back towards the finger of God, with the hope of merging the two together. The hope of merging them, creating that spark of closer and closer and closer, more magnetism, more magnetism, more magnetism, more, the tension stronger, stronger, and all of a sudden, boom, spark of awareness. And I think that some of these great works of ancient art are the finger of God and the symbolically on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. So if you have an opportunity to go and spend time with one of these pieces, please do. Please, who knows how many opportunities you have left to do something like this. If you have an opportunity to do that still, take advantage of it this summer. We know the fall it's going to change. Things are going to change in huge ways. So if there's things not far from where you live that you think might have an energetic charge, might have a transformative element to them, go see them. Go spend time with them. Why not? The worst that happens is you go see a quite famous work of art and you have no experience. You go home. You saw a nice piece of art. The best side of it is you might have something that allows you to come back and share something with all the rest of us in the comment section of, yeah. And if you have, I mean, almost everybody who's watching these videos have you can't be interested in this material and have not been going through, whether it be ancient sites, famous museums, famous art galleries, seeing famous pieces. You've seen this stuff yourself. So what are your experiences? What are the things that have happened to you? Have your experiences been kind of similar to mine, or are they really different? I'm curious to know what yours might be. So there's my YouTube video for the week. I'll be doing one free voice and one YouTube every week for now, as long as things are running the way they are. So my next upload will be a free voice video sometime middle of next week, I guess, and then we'll have another YouTube video later on the weekend. I guess the video on my to-do list is the Serpent Rouge, and or I guess this week. Actually, I'm already a week behind. So sometime by the end of this week will be the next free voice video, I guess. I've been looking at the Serpent Rouge for a long time, but it literally requires like 3 hours of my time where I can just block off the world, not think of anything else, sit down with this material, and pull out what's there. And I need to block out the 3 hours, literally pencil it in. And then we've got the masculine feminine video to finally go into depth with the exercise from quite a long time ago and talk about where the masculine feminine understandings will take us. So thanks for joining about ancient artwork. If you have an idea for a video, please also post it below. I'd like your ideas. It's kind of like I like to know where to take this stuff now, so it's good to know what you're interested in, what you'd like to hear more of or less of. And we'll see you with the next free voice video sometime in the next 5 or 6 days or so. Cheers.